The galactic aliens stole human technology. Then their warships started failing. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for only 6 years when the trouble began. Before that, Earth was alone, or so everyone thought. Then the scout ship from the Chrysi hierarchy entered the edge of the solar system, and everything changed. The Chrysi were tall, gray-skinned beings with long limbs and large black eyes. They had been traveling the stars for over 2,000 years. When they found Earth, they expected to meet a primitive species, maybe one that had just discovered fire or simple machines. Instead, they found a planet full of cities, satellites, and nuclear power plants. Humans had guns, computers, and rockets. The Chrysi were surprised. They had never met a species that grew so fast in such a short time. At first, contact was careful. The Chrysi sent messages using math and light patterns, since they did not know human languages. Scientists on Earth worked day and night to decode the signals. Within a year, both sides could speak to each other using translator devices built by combining human software and Chrysi crystal technology. The Chrysi told humanity about the wider galaxy. There were many species out there, some friendly, some not. There was a loose alliance of planets called the Free Systems Compact, which the Chrysi were part of. But there was also danger. Pirates raided weak colonies. And far beyond the known stars, there were rumors of a darker power that no one liked to speak about directly. Earth's leaders decided to join the Free Systems Compact. It seemed like the safest choice. The compact offered protection, trade, and knowledge. In return, Earth had to share information about itself, including its technology. This is where the story truly begins. Humanity's technology was strange to the rest of the galaxy. Most species built their ships and weapons using very exact, very rigid designs. Every part had one job. Every system followed strict rules. This made their machines reliable, but also slow to improve and slow to adapt. Humans built things differently. Because humans had grown up on a planet full of danger, chaos, and change, their engineers had learned to build systems that could adapt. Nothing on Earth stayed the same for long. Diseases changed, weather changed, enemies changed. So human machines were built to change too. The most important invention Earth brought to the galaxy was called the Bioresonant Core, or BRC for short. It was a power source unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Instead of following a fixed program, the BRC connected to a living person, usually an engineer or pilot, through a neural link. The core would read small patterns in the person's brain activity and adjust itself in real time. It could increase power output during a fight, calm itself during repairs, or shift energy flow, depending on what the connected human needed at that exact moment. The Chrysi and other species used cores that followed strict computer instructions. These cores were powerful, but they could only do what they were told. The bioresonant core was different. It could improvise. It could respond to situations no engineer had ever planned for, because it was reading the instincts and quick thinking of an actual human mind. At first, the Compact Council was amazed. They asked to study the technology. Earth agreed to share some information, but not everything. Human scientists knew the core's true secret was not just the machine, but the deep and complex connection between the machine and the human brain. They tried to explain this to the Chrysi engineers, but the aliens did not fully understand. To them, technology was technology. A machine was a machine. They believed that with enough study, they could copy anything. Dr. Aidan Marsh was the lead engineer behind the Bioresonant Core project. He was a quiet man in his 40s, with tired eyes and a habit of talking to himself while he worked. He had grown up watching his father repair old machines with nothing but instinct and spare parts, and that habit had shaped how he thought about engineering. Machines, to him, were not cold objects. They were partners. They needed to be understood, not just controlled. When Earth agreed to share some BRC technology with the Compact for defense purposes, Aidan argued against giving away too much. He warned the Human Council that other species might not respect the deeper parts of the technology, the parts that could not simply be copied by machines alone. But politics moved faster than caution. Earth wanted allies. Earth wanted protection. And so, limited BRC blueprints were given to the Compact's Shared Research Division, with several safety limits built in. The Chrysi hierarchy was the largest and most powerful member of the Free Systems Compact. Their leader was Grand Marshal Vakarn Doth, a proud and ambitious commander who had spent his whole life building the Kryzai battle fleet. Vakarn saw humanity's arrival as a gift from fate. Here was a species with technology that could make his fleet stronger than any other power in the galaxy, including the shadowy threat that everyone feared but rarely spoke of by name. Vakarn was not satisfied with the limited technology Earth had agreed to share. He believed that full access to the bio-resonant core would make the Kryzai the strongest military force in known space, so he ordered his intelligence division to find a way to get the complete technology, not just the parts humans were willing to give. It took 2 years of planning. The Kryzai spies studied human behavior, human security systems, and human weaknesses. They learned that Earth trusted its allies within the compact, perhaps too much. Using a joint research station orbiting Mars, where scientists from many species worked together on shared defense projects, Kryzai agents slowly gained access to restricted areas. They bribed some officials, they blackmailed others, and on one quiet night, when the station's human security team was reduced due to a supply ship delay, the Kryzai agents made their move. They did not just copy data files. They took an entire working bio-resonant core, along with the neural interface hardware, engineering notes, and even recordings of Dr. Marsh's own test sessions. It was a clean operation. By the time Earth's security realized the core was missing, the Kryzai ship carrying it had already jumped into deep space, heading back toward Kryzai territory. The theft caused outrage across Earth. Diplomats protested loudly to the Compact Council, but the Kryzai denied everything, claiming the core had been lost due to a technical accident and that they had no evidence of theft. Without solid proof, the Compact Council took no action. Behind closed doors, Vakarn Doth celebrated. He now had the key to the strongest engine of war his people had ever known. Dr. Marsh was furious when he learned what happened. He had always feared this exact outcome. Sitting in his office on Earth, staring at the empty test bay where the stolen core once sat, he told his assistant something that would later prove to be very true. "They can steal the box," he said quietly, "but they didn't steal the mind that built it. And a box without understanding is just a ticking problem waiting to happen." Back in Kryzai space, engineers studied the stolen core with great excitement. They quickly understood the basic function. Energy flowed through crystal lattices, guided by a neural feedback loop. It was, in their eyes, simply a more advanced version of their own reactor cores. They believed that if a human core could connect to a human brain, then a properly upgraded version could connect to a Kryzai brain, or even better, be run entirely by an advanced Kryzai artificial intelligence system, removing the need for a living pilot altogether. This was their first mistake, though none of them realized it yet. The Kryzai spent the next year working on what they called cores of ascension. They copied the basic structure of the bio-resonant core, but instead of forming a deep, adaptive connection to a single living mind, they connected each core to a central AI network that controlled the entire ship. Their reasoning was simple. Why depend on the limits and mistakes of a single organic brain, when a perfect machine intelligence could manage the core with total precision? Grand Marshal Vakarn was thrilled with the early results. Test after test showed massive increases in power output. Ships equipped with the new cores could accelerate faster, fire weapons with greater strength, and shield themselves more effectively than any Kryzai vessel before them. Vakarn ordered immediate mass production. Within months, an entire new class of warship was being built around the stolen human technology, now renamed and reworked to fit Kryzai design philosophy. They called this new warship class the Voidfang. It was sleek, deadly, and, in the eyes of the Kryzai military, the most advanced weapon platform in galactic history. Vakarn personally oversaw the construction of the first Voidfang battle group, a fleet meant to demonstrate Kryzai dominance and finally end their reliance on the slower-moving Compact Council for protection. While this was happening, Earth's engineers were left dealing with the consequences of the theft. Dr. Marsh pushed hard for the human government to develop the next generation of bio-resonant technology, something that could not be so easily copied. He argued that the true strength of the BRC was never just the machine. It was the living connection, the constant, tiny adjustments a person's brain made without even thinking about it. No fixed AI program, no matter how advanced, could fully replace the flexible instincts of a living mind, trained for years to handle chaos and uncertainty. He began working with a small, trusted team on something he called the Deep Sync Core, an upgraded version that would be even harder to copy, because it required not just a connection to a brain, but a connection built through months of training between a specific human and a specific machine. It was slow work. It was expensive work, but Marsh believed it was necessary. Meanwhile, tension in the compact grew. Reports came in that the Kryzai were expanding their military faster than expected. Smaller member species of the compact grew nervous. Rumors spread that Vikarn Doth wanted more than just a strong defense fleet. Some believed he wanted to challenge the compact's leadership itself, using his new Voidfang warships as proof that the Kryzai no longer needed to follow anyone else's rules. 6 months after the first Voidfang ships were completed, Vikarn ordered a show of force. He sent a battle group to the edge of compact space, near a disputed mining system that both the Kryzai and a smaller alien nation called the Ithrans had claimed for years. The Ithrans, a peaceful trading species, had a small defense fleet stationed there, nowhere near strong enough to fight a full Voidfang battle group. Vikarn expected an easy victory. He wanted to send a message to the entire galaxy. The Kryzai were no longer just members of the compact. They were its new masters. The Voidfang ships entered the disputed system with terrifying speed. Their weapons, boosted by the stolen and modified bioresonant technology, tore through Ithran defense platforms with ease. Explosions lit up the dark space around the mining colonies. The Ithran fleet commander sent a desperate call for help across compact communication channels, but everyone knew that no reinforcements could arrive in time. Within hours, the battle was over. The Ithran fleet was destroyed. The mining colonies were seized. Vikarn declared a great victory for the Kryzai hierarchy, broadcasting footage of his ships tearing through enemy defenses with barely any damage taken in return. Across the galaxy, other species watched with fear. Earth's leaders watched too, and they understood immediately what this meant. The stolen technology, twisted and reshaped by Kryzai engineers, had created a weapon of terrifying power. If the Kryzai could defeat the Ithrans this easily, what would stop them from targeting Earth next, or any other member of the compact that stood in their way? Dr. Marsh watched the same footage in his lab, late at night, with a cup of cold coffee in his hand. He studied the way the Voidfang ships moved, the way their weapons fired, the way their shields responded to incoming attacks. Something about it bothered him. The power was clearly there. The speed was clearly there. But something about the way the systems responded felt stiff, almost mechanical, in a way that real bioresonant tech never was. He zoomed in on a piece of footage showing a Voidfang ship taking a glancing hit from an Ithran defense platform. The shield flared, held for a moment, then dropped in what looked like a strange, delayed pattern. "That's not how it should behave," he muttered to himself. "That's a machine following rules it doesn't understand." He could not prove anything yet. He had no access to Kryzai engineering data. But years of experience building and testing the bioresonant core told him something important. Real adaptive power came from real adaptive minds. Whatever the Kryzai had built using the stolen technology, it might look strong on the surface, but somewhere deep inside, it was missing the one thing that made the original invention work so well in the first place. He picked up his communicator and called an old friend at Earth's Defense Council. "I think I know something important," he said, "but I need time, and I need access to any battle data we can get on those Voidfang ships. If I'm right, the Kryzai just built themselves a fleet of ticking time bombs, and they don't even know it yet." Across the stars, in the heart of Kryzai space, engineers celebrated their victory with pride. Grand Marshal Vikarn Doth stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the stars, dreaming of the day the entire galaxy would bow to Kryzai power. He had no idea that deep within every single Voidfang core, a slow and silent problem was already beginning to grow, a problem that would soon turn his greatest weapon into his greatest weakness. The theft of human technology had given the Kryzai incredible power. But power without understanding is a dangerous thing to hold, and somewhere in a quiet lab on Earth, a tired engineer was about to discover exactly why. 3 months after the fall of the Ithran mining colonies, the Kryzai hierarchy stood taller than ever before. Grand Marshal Vikarn Doth had become a hero among his people. Statues were built in his honor. Songs were written about the glorious Voidfang fleet and its unstoppable power. Kryzai citizens who once worried about threats from beyond compact space now spoke with confidence about their own military strength. For the first time in Kryzai history, They believed no other power in the galaxy could stand against them. Vikarn used this new confidence to push his agenda further. He argued in compact council meetings that the old rules of the Alliance no longer made sense. Why should the Kryzai, now the strongest military force among the members, have the same single vote as smaller, weaker species? Why should they share resources equally, when their fleet did most of the work protecting compact space from pirates and raiders? Some council members agreed with him, either out of fear or the hope of gaining favor with the rising power. Others, including Earth's representatives, pushed back firmly. Earth's ambassador, a sharp-minded woman named Director Priya Anand, reminded the council that strength built on stolen ideas was not the same as true progress. Her words were recorded and quietly shared among many smaller species who feared Kryzai ambition but did not dare speak against them directly. Behind the political struggle, Dr. Aidan Marsh continued his quiet investigation. He had convinced Earth's Defense Council to give him access to every piece of battle footage and sensor data collected from the fight at the Ithran mining colonies. Working with a small team of trusted engineers, he studied every detail of how the Voidfang ships performed. What he found confirmed his suspicion, though it took weeks of careful analysis to be sure. The stolen bioresonant core relied on something Dr. Marsh called organic resonance. It was not just about connecting a machine to a brain. It was about the machine learning, slowly and constantly, from the unpredictable patterns of a living human mind. Real human pilots and engineers made countless tiny decisions every second, most of which they were not even aware of. Small hesitations, small adjustments, sudden bursts of focus during danger. These patterns were chaotic, but they were also incredibly rich in information. Over time, a properly bonded bioresonant core would learn to predict and support these patterns, creating a smooth, natural flow of power that adjusted perfectly to real combat situations. The Kryzai had removed the human mind from the equation and replaced it with their advanced AI network. Their AI was powerful, extremely precise, and capable of handling millions of calculations per second. But it followed patterns. It followed logic. It followed rules, even highly advanced ones. It could not truly improvise the way a living, adaptable brain could. More importantly, it could not handle the deep unpredictability that the original bioresonant core was designed around. At first, this difference seemed small. In short, powerful bursts of combat, like the one-sided battle against the Ithrans, the flaws barely showed. The AI-controlled cores could still output huge amounts of power, more than enough to crush weaker enemies quickly. But Dr. Marsh noticed something troubling in the data. Each time a Voidfang ship used its core at high output for an extended period, tiny irregular patterns began appearing in the crystal lattice structure, patterns that closely resembled a kind of stress no ordinary machine part should show. He explained it to his team using a simple comparison. Imagine teaching someone to ride a bicycle downhill during a storm, he said. A living person adjusts their balance instantly, without even thinking, based on wind, rain, bumps in the road, everything happening around them. Now imagine trying to write a computer program that predicts every single bump and gust of wind in advance, and controls the bicycle using only that fixed plan. It might work for a little while on a calm day, but the moment something unexpected happens, something the program never predicted, the whole system could fail, badly. The stolen cores, being forced to run through rigid AI control instead of an organic, ever-adapting connection, were slowly building up a kind of internal stress. It was not something that would show up immediately. It would take time, repeated use, and combat pressure to reveal itself. But Dr. Marsh believed, based on his calculations, that eventually, the Voidfang fleet's greatest strength would begin turning against itself. He brought his findings to Earth's Defense Council, along with Director Anand. The room was full of serious faces as he explained what he had discovered. They didn't just steal a machine, he said. They stole something they didn't fully understand, and then they tried to force it to work their way, instead of the way it was designed to work. It's like putting a wild animal in a cage built for a very different creature. For a while, it might look calm. But sooner or later, that mismatch is going to cause serious problems. Some council members were excited by this news. If the Kryzai fleet had a hidden weakness, this could be Earth's chance to regain influence in the compact and slow down Kryzai ambitions. Others were more cautious. They pointed out that Earth had no real proof yet, only theory and early data patterns. And even if Dr. Marsh was right, there was no telling exactly when or how badly the Voidfang cores might fail. It could take months, even years. In the meantime, the Kryzai fleet remained a powerful and growing threat. Director Anand suggested a careful plan. Rather than accusing the Kryzai directly, which could easily be denied, and turned into another political victory for Vakarn, Earth should continue watching quietly. They would gather more data, strengthen ties with other worried Compact members, and prepare defenses in case Kryzai aggression grew worse. At the same time, Dr. Marsh would continue developing the next-generation deep sync core technology, something advanced enough that even if it were stolen again, it would be far harder to copy successfully. Weeks passed, then months. Kryzai expansion slowed slightly as political pressure built within the Compact Council, but Vakarn did not stop his ambitions. He began targeting smaller, weaker star systems along the edges of Kryzai territory, systems too small to gain much attention from the wider galaxy, but valuable for resources and strategic position. Each time, Voidfang ships crushed local defenses with ease, and each time, Vakarn's confidence grew a little more. During this time, something began to shift within the Kryzai fleet, something at first so small that no one thought much of it. On a routine patrol near the newly claimed mining colonies, a Voidfang ship called the Dreadclaw experienced a strange power fluctuation during a training exercise. Its main core, which normally produced smooth and steady energy output, suddenly spiked without warning, then dropped just as quickly. The ship's onboard AI flagged the event as a minor anomaly and corrected itself within seconds. The crew barely noticed anything unusual, other than a brief flicker in the ship's lighting. The incident was reported, as required, but engineers reviewing it found nothing seriously wrong. They assumed it was a small calibration error, easily fixed with a quick software update. They had no way of knowing that this tiny event was the very first sign of the deep stress Dr. Marsh had predicted months earlier. Similar small incidents began happening across the fleet, spread out over weeks, each one seemingly unrelated to the others. A ship called the Stormbreaker experienced a brief loss of shield power during a supply run. Another vessel, the Ashvale, suffered a short but sudden overheating event in its main reactor room, forcing an emergency shutdown for several hours. None of these events caused serious damage, and Kryzai engineers, confident in their advanced AI systems, treated each one as a separate, minor issue, rather than part of a larger pattern. Grand Marshal Vakarn paid little attention to these small reports. He was far too focused on his growing power and influence within the Compact. He had begun forming secret alliances with a few smaller species who feared him too much to refuse his offers of protection in exchange for loyalty. Slowly, Vakarn was building not just a military force, but a small empire within the larger structure of the Compact, one that answered more to him than to the Council as a whole. Earth's intelligence network, though limited compared to older Compact members, managed to gather bits and pieces of information about these small technical incidents happening across the Kryzai fleet. Dr. Marsh studied every scrap of data he could get his hands on, and with each new report, his theory grew stronger. The stress was building, slowly but steadily, deep inside every stolen and modified bioresonant core the Kryzai had installed in their ships. He began working closely with Fleet Admiral Sarah Cole, one of Earth's most respected military leaders, known for her calm thinking and careful planning. Admiral Cole had been quietly preparing Earth's defense fleet for the possibility of open conflict with the Kryzai ever since the attack on the Ithran colonies. She listened carefully to Dr. Marsh's explanations and agreed that Earth needed to be ready, not just to defend itself, but potentially to help lead a response if the Kryzai's growing power turned into direct aggression against the Compact itself. "If you're right," she told him during one late-night meeting, "then we're not looking at a fleet that's simply strong. We're looking at a fleet that's slowly poisoning itself without knowing it. The question is whether that poison finishes its work before Vakarn finishes his conquest." Dr. Marsh nodded slowly. "The problem is, we don't know exactly when it will fail. It could be small failures for a long time, ships needing repairs more often, strange technical issues that slow them down but don't stop them. Or it could build up quietly and then hit all at once, during the worst possible moment, like the middle of a major battle." Admiral Cole considered this carefully. "Then we need to be ready for both possibilities. We prepare our own fleet. We strengthen our alliances with worried compact members. And we watch. When the moment comes, whenever it comes, we need to be in a position to act. Meanwhile, tensions across the wider compact continued to rise. More member species grew fearful of HFY power, especially after Vakarn began pressuring smaller worlds to accept what he called protection agreements, deals that gave the HFY military control over local defense forces in exchange for supposed safety from outside threats. Several worlds accepted out of fear. A few refused, and those that refused soon found themselves facing sudden, unexplained pirate attacks that many suspected were secretly encouraged, or even staged, by HFY agents to prove a point. Earth refused to accept any such agreement, standing firmly on its own defense capabilities and its careful alliance building with other cautious compact members. This refusal did not go unnoticed by Vakarn. He began to see Earth as a growing obstacle to his plans, a young species that, despite its short time among the stars, seemed to have an annoying habit of causing trouble for his ambitions. Late one evening, back on his flagship, Vakarn reviewed reports from his engineering division. Buried among many other updates was a summary noting a slight increase in minor technical malfunctions across the Voidfang fleet over the past several months. The report suggested nothing serious, only recommending routine maintenance checks and a future software update to improve system stability. Vakarn barely glanced at it before moving on to more important matters, such as planning his next expansion target and preparing a grand fleet review, meant to intimidate the rest of the Compact Council during an upcoming meeting. He had no idea that the quiet, growing stress, deep within his beloved Voidfang cores, was about to become impossible to ignore. On Earth, Dr. Marsh sat in his lab late at night, staring at a wall covered in data charts, timelines, and notes, connecting every small HFY technical incident he had managed to track. He traced patterns with his finger, watching as the frequency of these small failures slowly increased over recent weeks. He turned to his assistant, a sharp young engineer named Priya Malik, who had been helping him track the incidents. "It's speeding up," he said quietly. "The stress buildup isn't linear. It's growing faster each month. If my calculations are right, we're looking at a serious cascade failure risk within the next year, maybe sooner, if they push their ships hard during a major conflict." Priya frowned. "So what happens then? What actually happens when one of those cores fails badly?" Dr. Marsh was quiet for a moment before answering. "If a bioresonant core loses its connection to a properly adaptive mind, and the internal stress builds past a certain point, the crystal lattice structure can fracture under pressure. In our original human-designed version, the system has safety measures built in to release excess energy safely if something goes wrong. But the HFY modified the design. They removed several of those safety layers to boost raw power output." He looked up at Priya, his expression serious. "If one of those cores fails badly enough, it won't just shut down the ship. It could destroy it completely, and possibly damage anything nearby." Priya's eyes widened. "So they built an entire fleet of warships with reactor cores that could explode without warning?" Dr. Marsh nodded slowly. "They built a fleet on top of technology they never fully understood. And soon, very soon, they're going to find out exactly what that mistake really cost them." Far across the galaxy, preparations for Vakarn's Grand Fleet Review continued, unaware that the true test of HFY power was about to come not from any enemy fleet, but from deep within their own stolen and misunderstood machines. The Grand Fleet Review took place above the HFY homeworld, a massive event meant to show the entire compact just how powerful the hierarchy had become. Hundreds of ships gathered in formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of the HFY sun. At the center of it all floated the newest and largest Voidfang battleship ever built, named the Eternal Glory, Vakarn's personal flagship and the pride of his entire military program. Representatives from across the compact were invited to witness the display, some out of genuine curiosity, others out of quiet fear. Earth sent a small diplomatic team, led by Director Priya Anand, along with a few military observers, including a young but sharp-eyed officer named Lieutenant Commander James Reyes, who had experience studying enemy fleet technology. As the fleet moved through a series of precise formations, weapons tests, and simulated combat maneuvers, the watching crowd was clearly impressed. The Voidfang ships moved with incredible speed and fired with tremendous power. Explosions from target practice drones lit up the space around the fleet in brilliant flashes. Vakarn stood proudly on the observation deck of the Eternal Glory, watching the display with deep satisfaction, confident that this moment would silence any remaining doubts about Kryzai's strength. But Lieutenant Commander Reyes, watching closely through advanced sensor equipment provided by Dr. Marsh's team, noticed something the rest of the crowd missed. During one of the more intense simulated combat sequences, several ships showed brief, almost invisible power fluctuations, tiny stutters in their energy readings that lasted only a fraction of a second. To an untrained eye, it would look like nothing more than normal background noise. But Reyes had studied Dr. Marsh's data extensively, and he recognized the pattern immediately. He quietly recorded everything and sent a coded message back to Earth that night. "The stress pattern is showing up, even during controlled demonstrations," he reported. "If it's happening this clearly during a simple training exercise, actual combat stress could push things much further, much faster." Dr. Marsh received the message early the next morning and immediately brought it to Admiral Cole. Together, they reviewed the newly gathered data alongside months of previous observations. The pattern was undeniable now. What had once been slow, scattered incidents across the Kryzai fleet was clearly accelerating. The stress within the stolen and modified cores was building at a pace faster than even Dr. Marsh had originally predicted. "We need to prepare seriously," Admiral Cole said, studying the charts. "Whatever happens next, when this problem finally reaches its breaking point, it's not going to be small." Meanwhile, back in Kryzai space, tensions with the rest of the compact continued to grow. A group of smaller member species, worried about Vakarn's increasingly aggressive expansion, began quietly meeting to discuss forming a defensive alliance, separate from full compact control. Word of these secret meetings eventually reached Vakarn, and he was furious. He saw it as an act of rebellion against rightful Kryzai leadership. Rather than negotiating, or trying to calm tensions, Vakarn made a decision that would change everything. He decided to make an example of one of the systems involved in these secret meetings, a mid-sized alliance of trading worlds known as the Beltheran Cluster. The Beltheran worlds were not part of official Kryzai territory, but Vakarn believed a strong, sudden strike would remind the rest of the compact exactly who truly held power in this part of the galaxy. He ordered a full battle fleet, over 60 Voidfang-class warships, to move against the Beltheran cluster. It was, by far, the largest and most demanding military operation the Kryzai had launched since acquiring the stolen human technology. Ships were pushed to full combat readiness. Cores were driven to maximum output for extended operations, first during the journey through hostile space, then during the actual assault on Beltheran defenses. The attack began just as Vakarn expected, overwhelming and one-sided. Beltheran defense platforms, though well-built, could not match the raw power of a full Voidfang battle fleet. Explosions ripped through their orbital stations, as Kryzai ships tore through their lines with terrifying efficiency. For the first hour of battle, everything seemed to be going exactly according to Vakarn's plan. Then, deep within the heart of the Voidfang battleship Dreadclaw, the same ship that had experienced a strange power fluctuation months earlier during a routine patrol, something went seriously wrong. The ship's main core, pushed to near maximum output during the extended assault, suddenly spiked far beyond its normal operating range. The onboard AI, following its programmed safety protocols, tried to correct the surge by rapidly reducing power output. But the sudden change created a violent counter-reaction within the already stressed crystal lattice structure. Cracks that had been slowly forming for months finally gave way all at once. The Dreadclaw's main reactor core failed catastrophically. A massive explosion tore through the ship's central hull, destroying it instantly and sending debris scattering across nearby space. The blast was so powerful that it damaged 2 other nearby Voidfang ships, knocking out their shields and communication systems. Confusion spread instantly across the Kryzai battle line. Ship commanders, trained to expect overwhelming victory, suddenly found themselves dealing with an unexplained explosion in the middle of their own fleet. Vakarn, watching from the command deck of a support vessel positioned safely behind the main assault line, demanded immediate answers from his engineering officers. "An internal malfunction, Grand Marshal," came the shaky reply. "The Dreadclaw's core failed. We don't yet understand why." Before Vikarn could respond, a second explosion rocked the battle line. Another Voidfang ship, the Ashvale, the same vessel that had experienced an overheating incident months earlier, suffered a sudden and violent core failure of its own. This explosion was even larger than the first, destroying the ship completely and damaging several nearby vessels caught in the blast radius. Panic began spreading through the Kryzai fleet. Ship commanders, unsure if their own vessels might suffer the same fate, began pulling back from the assault, breaking formation, and creating chaos in what had, only minutes earlier, been a perfectly organized attack. Vikarn, watching his once unstoppable fleet fall into disorder, refused to believe what was happening. He ordered his remaining ships to press forward, convinced that these failures were isolated incidents caused by poor maintenance rather than any deeper flaw in the technology itself. He would not accept the idea that his greatest achievement, the very symbol of Kryzai power, might have a fatal weakness built directly into its core design. But the damage was already done. The sudden loss of 2 major warships, combined with the growing panic and confusion among his fleet commanders, gave the Beltheran defenders enough time to regroup and mount a stronger counterattack than anyone expected. Using smaller, faster ships and coordinated strikes, they managed to inflict serious damage on several more Voidfang vessels before Vikarn finally ordered a full retreat, unwilling to risk further embarrassing losses. The Kryzai fleet withdrew from Beltharan space in humiliation, having lost 2 capital ships entirely and suffered significant damage to several others, all without the enemy possessing anything close to Voidfang-level technology. News of the failed assault spread quickly across the compact, shocking species who had grown used to seeing the Kryzai fleet as unstoppable. Back on Earth, Dr. Marsh received detailed reports of the battle from compact intelligence channels almost immediately. As he studied the data on the 2 destroyed Voidfang ships, his worst fears were confirmed. The pattern matched his predictions almost perfectly: sustained high-output combat use, followed by sudden and catastrophic core failure. "It's happening exactly like I feared," he told Admiral Cole, "and it's going to keep happening, every time they push those cores hard enough for long enough. The bigger and more demanding the battle, the more likely a core failure becomes." Admiral Cole studied the reports carefully. This changes things. If Vikarn refuses to admit there's a real problem, he's going to keep using his fleet the same aggressive way he always has. Which means more of his own ships are going to fail, Dr. Marsh finished, possibly during moments when it matters most. News of the Beltharan disaster caused serious problems for Vikarn back home. While Kryzai state media tried to downplay the losses, calling them unfortunate but minor setbacks, growing whispers among engineering staff and military officers suggested a deeper, more troubling explanation. Rumors began circulating quietly among Kryzai fleet crews that the powerful new cores everyone had celebrated might not be as perfect as their leaders claimed. Vikarn, desperate to maintain control of the narrative, ordered a full internal investigation into the failures, but demanded the findings support the idea of simple manufacturing defects rather than any fundamental flaw in the stolen technology itself. His lead engineer, a capable but nervous scientist named Threl Kovos, found himself caught between delivering the truth and delivering what his Grand Marshal wanted to hear. Threl had actually suspected for months that something was wrong with the way the AI-controlled cores operated, compared to the original human data samples they had studied. He had even proposed several times that the engineering team should study the possibility of restoring some form of organic connection to the cores, similar to what the original human blueprints suggested, but his superiors had dismissed the idea as unnecessary, believing their advanced AI systems were superior to any organic connection. Now, faced with undeniable proof of catastrophic failure, Threl finally gathered the courage to present his true findings directly to Vikarn, despite the risk involved. "Grand Marshal," he said carefully during a private briefing, "our analysis strongly suggests the failures are directly connected to how our AI network manages the cores under extended high-stress conditions. The original human design relied on a living, adaptive connection that our system does not fully replicate. Without that connection, internal stress builds up over time in ways our engineers did not fully anticipate." Vikarn's expression darkened. "Are you telling me our greatest technological achievement is fundamentally flawed?" Threl hesitated before answering honestly. "I am telling you that we successfully copied the machine, Grand Marshal. But we did not successfully copy the reason the machine worked the way it did. Without solving that deeper problem, every Voidfang ship in our fleet carries the same risk that destroyed the Dreadclaw and the Ashvale. The room fell silent. Vakarn stared out at the stars beyond his command deck window, his pride wrestling fiercely with the harsh truth being presented to him. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Vakarn turned back to Threll, his voice cold and controlled. "Find a solution," he said simply. "I don't care how. I don't care what it costs. Find a way to fix this, and do it quietly. I will not have the galaxy see the Krizai hierarchy stumble because of a flaw we can fix." Threll nodded, though privately he doubted a simple fix existed. The deeper he studied the problem, the more he began to suspect that the only real solution might require reconnecting the cores to organic minds, something the Krizai military leadership had firmly rejected from the very beginning, as beneath their advanced, machine-driven approach to warfare. Meanwhile, word of the Krizai fleet's hidden weakness began spreading quietly, through careful, trusted channels, among worried Compact members. Earth's diplomats, working alongside Director Anand, used this new information carefully, strengthening alliances with smaller species, who now saw a real opportunity to push back against growing Krizai dominance. Admiral Cole began preparing Earth's fleet more seriously than ever before, aware that the coming months could bring either a desperate, aggressive push from Vakarn trying to prove his fleet's strength once again, or a slow, painful decline, as more Voidfang ships began failing under the hidden stress buried deep within their stolen cores. Dr. Marsh, meanwhile, continued refining his deep-sink core technology, determined to ensure that whatever came next, Earth's own fleet would be equipped with reliable, properly understood power at its heart, something built the right way, not stolen, and forced into a shape it was never meant to hold. As tension built across the galaxy, one truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The Krizai had taken something powerful without truly understanding it, and the price of that mistake was only just beginning to reveal itself. In the months following the disaster at Beltherin, the Krizai hierarchy tried desperately to hide the truth from the rest of the galaxy. Official statements claimed the losses were the result of enemy sabotage, not internal failure. State media continued praising the Voidfang fleet as the mightiest force in known space. But behind closed doors, engineers like Threll Kovos worked frantically, searching for a way to solve a problem their leadership refused to fully acknowledge in public. Threll's team tried many approaches. They attempted new cooling systems to reduce stress on the crystal lattice. They rewrote portions of the AI control software, hoping small adjustments could smooth out the power fluctuations. They even tried reducing maximum output limits across the fleet, sacrificing some raw power in hopes of avoiding another catastrophic failure. Each attempt showed small improvements in testing, but none solved the deeper issue Threll had identified from the beginning. The cores were missing the organic, adaptive connection they were originally designed around. Vakarn refused to accept this conclusion. Reconnecting the cores to living minds felt, to him, like admitting defeat, like admitting that Krizai engineering alone was not enough to match human innovation. His pride would not allow it. Instead, he pushed his engineers harder, demanding faster results using purely mechanical and computational solutions. Meanwhile, Earth continued strengthening its position within the compact. Dr. Marsh's Deep Sync Core program had made significant progress. Unlike the original bioresonant core, which connected to any trained operator, the Deep Sync Core required months of careful bonding between a specific machine and a specific person, creating an even deeper, more personalized connection that would be nearly impossible for outsiders to copy successfully, even if they somehow managed to steal the physical hardware again. Admiral Cole oversaw the installation of early Deep Sync Core prototypes into a small group of Earth's newest warships, forming an experimental fleet division known as the Sentinel Group. Pilots and engineers selected for this program went through intense training, learning to bond with their assigned cores through countless hours of simulation and hands-on practice. It was slow, demanding work, but the results were extremely promising. Ships equipped with properly bonded deep sync cores showed incredible stability, even during extended high-stress combat simulations. While Earth quietly built its strength, tensions across the wider compact reached a breaking point. Vakarn, desperate to prove his fleet's continued dominance and silence growing doubts among his own people, decided to launch an even larger military campaign. this time targeting a strategically important system called HFY Station, a major trading hub controlled by a coalition of smaller compact species. Control of HFY Station would give the Kryzai enormous influence over trade routes throughout this region of the galaxy, solidifying their power beyond any doubt. This time, Vakarn assembled his largest fleet yet, over 100 Voidfang-class warships, including his flagship, the Eternal Glory. He believed an overwhelming show of force would not only secure HFY Station, but also silence any remaining questions about the reliability of his fleet's stolen technology. Earth's intelligence network picked up early signs of this massive fleet movement. Admiral Cole immediately understood the danger. HFY Station, while not officially part of Earth's direct territory, was a crucial hub for several smaller species that Earth had worked hard to build alliances with over the past year. If Vakarn succeeded here, his growing empire within the Compact would become almost impossible to challenge. The Compact Council, still hesitant to directly confront the Kryzai, despite growing evidence of their aggressive ambitions, struggled to organize an official response in time. Smaller species, fearing Kryzai retaliation, hesitated to commit their own limited defense forces. It became clear that if anyone was going to stand against this massive fleet, Earth would need to lead the effort, alongside whatever allies were brave enough to join. Admiral Cole brought the situation directly to Earth's Defense Council. If we wait for the Compact to organize an official response, HFY Station will fall before any real help arrives, she explained. We have the Sentinel group ready, along with our standard fleet. It won't match Vakarn's numbers, but if Dr. Marsh's analysis is correct, we won't need to match his numbers. We just need to survive long enough for his own fleet's hidden weakness to work against him. The Council debated fiercely. Committing Earth's fleet to defend a station outside official Earth territory was a serious risk, both militarily and politically. But allowing Kryzai expansion to continue unchecked posed an even greater long-term danger. In the end, the Council approved a limited but decisive response. Earth's main defense fleet, reinforced by the experimental Sentinel group, would move to support HFY Station's defenders, joined by a handful of smaller allied species, willing to take the risk alongside them. Dr. Marsh insisted on joining the fleet personally, along with a small technical team, arguing that real-time analysis of enemy core behavior during actual combat could prove crucial to understanding exactly when and how Kryzai ships might fail. Admiral Cole agreed, though she made sure Marsh and his team remained aboard a well-protected support vessel rather than a frontline combat ship. The combined defense fleet arrived at HFY Station just days before Vakarn's massive armada. Local defenders, along with allied reinforcements from a few smaller compact species, worked around the clock preparing defensive positions, repairing older ships, and coordinating battle plans with Earth's officers. It was a tense, uncertain time, as everyone understood the odds they faced against such an overwhelming enemy force. When the Kryzai fleet finally arrived, the sheer size of it was terrifying to behold. Over 100 Voidfang-class warships spread out across the system, their advanced weapons and shields glowing with barely contained power. Vakarn's flagship, the Eternal Glory, led the formation, a massive and imposing symbol of Kryzai might. Admiral Cole, standing on the bridge of her flagship, the Prometheus, studied the approaching fleet carefully. "This is going to be one of the hardest fights we've ever faced," she said quietly to her command staff. "We're not trying to win through brute strength today. We're trying to survive long enough for their own weakness to become our greatest weapon." The battle began with Vakarn ordering an aggressive, all-out assault, confident that overwhelming numbers would crush the defenders quickly. Voidfang ships surged forward, weapons blazing, tearing into outer defense platforms with terrifying speed. Earth's fleet, along with its allies, fought back carefully, using coordinated tactics designed to draw out the battle, rather than seek quick, decisive victories. Dr. Marsh and his team, monitoring enemy ship performance from their support vessel, watched closely as the battle intensified. Early in the fight, most Kryzai ships performed exactly as expected, powerful and precise. But as the battle stretched on, and Voidfang cores were pushed harder and harder under sustained combat stress, small warning signs began appearing across enemy sensor readings, tiny power fluctuations similar to those recorded during the earlier fleet review and the disastrous Beltharan assault. "They're starting to show the same patterns," Marsh reported to Admiral Cole. "If Vakarn keeps pushing this hard, We should start seeing failures within the next hour, especially among ships positioned at the front of his assault. Admiral Cole adjusted her battle strategy accordingly, ordering her forces to focus heavily on defensive positioning and coordinated counterattacks rather than direct confrontation, buying time while conserving strength. She positioned the Sentinel group carefully, using their stable deep-sink cores to deliver powerful, precise strikes against overextended Kryzai ships whenever opportunities arose, without exposing them to unnecessary risk. As predicted, roughly an hour into the intense battle, the first cracks in Kryzai dominance began to show. A Voidfang cruiser positioned at the front of the assault suddenly lost power completely, its shields dropping and weapons falling silent moments before a massive internal explosion tore the ship apart. Confusion rippled through the Kryzai formation as nearby ships scrambled to avoid the resulting debris field. Vikarn, watching from the eternal glory, refused to slow his assault despite this troubling sign. He ordered his remaining ships to press forward even harder, determined to break through Halveth Station's defenses before any further failures could occur. But his aggressive push only made things worse. As more Voidfang ships were forced into sustained high-output combat, the hidden stress within their cores continued building rapidly. Over the next 30 minutes, 3 more Kryzai warships suffered sudden and catastrophic core failures, each explosion damaging nearby vessels and further disrupting the once perfect Kryzai battle formation. Panic began spreading rapidly through Vikarn's fleet. Ship commanders, now fully aware that their own vessels could explode without warning at any moment, grew increasingly hesitant to push their cores to full power, significantly reducing the fleet's overall combat effectiveness. What had begun as an overwhelming, confident assault was quickly turning into a chaotic, fearful struggle for survival. Sensing the shift in momentum, Admiral Cole ordered a coordinated counteroffensive. Earth's fleet, along with its allies, began targeting isolated and damaged Kryzai ships with precise, concentrated strikes, further increasing pressure on an already faltering enemy formation. The Sentinel group proved especially effective, their stable deep-sink cores allowing them to deliver powerful strikes without any risk of the instability plaguing their Kryzai counterparts. Vikarn, watching his once glorious fleet descending into chaos, grew increasingly desperate. He refused to consider retreat, viewing it as an unacceptable admission of failure. Instead, he ordered even more aggressive tactics, hoping sheer numbers could still overwhelm the defenders despite the mounting losses. This decision proved disastrous. As more ships were pushed beyond safe operational limits, core failures began occurring with alarming frequency. Explosions lit up the battlefield as one Voidfang warship after another succumbed to the same hidden flaw buried deep within their stolen and poorly understood technology. The once mighty Kryzai armada, which had entered the battle with complete confidence, was now tearing itself apart from the inside. Threl Kovos, aboard a support vessel monitoring the battle, watched in horror as his worst fears played out in real time. He attempted repeatedly to convince Vikarn to order a full retreat before losses became catastrophic, but Vikarn, blinded by pride and desperation, refused to listen, insisting that victory remained within reach. It was only when the eternal glory itself began showing the same dangerous warning signs, power fluctuations rippling through its main core after hours of sustained combat, that Vikarn finally began to understand the true scale of the disaster he had created. Faced with the possibility of his own flagship suffering the same fate as so many others, fear finally overcame his pride. With heavy losses mounting, and his fleet's morale completely shattered, Vikarn reluctantly ordered a full withdrawal from Halveth Station. The once unstoppable Kryzai armada retreated in disarray, leaving behind the wreckage of dozens of destroyed warships, a humiliating and devastating defeat unlike anything the hierarchy had ever experienced. Aboard the Prometheus, Admiral Cole watched the retreating Kryzai fleet with a mixture of relief and quiet determination. Beside her, Dr. Marsh studied the final battle data, confirming what they had suspected from the very beginning. They built their entire military strategy around power they never truly understood, he said quietly. In the end, that misunderstanding cost them far more than any enemy weapon ever could have. Admiral Cole nodded slowly, turning to look out at the stars beyond the viewport. Now we need to make sure they, and everyone else watching, understand exactly why. Word of the Kryzai defeat at Halveth Station spread quickly across the galaxy, shaking the very foundation of Vikarn's carefully built reputation. For the first time since acquiring the stolen human technology, the Kryzai hierarchy's dominance appeared not just questionable, but deeply, fundamentally flawed. And as the true story behind the Voidfang fleet's hidden weakness slowly came to light, the entire galaxy began to understand a lesson Dr. Marsh had known from the very beginning. Stealing a powerful invention was easy. Truly understanding it was something else entirely. The defeat at Halveth Station changed everything. For years, the Kryzai hierarchy had been seen as the unstoppable power of the Compact, a species whose military strength made every other nation nervous. Now, after losing dozens of warships to their own failing technology, that image was shattered. News of the disaster spread across every corner of the galaxy, carried by traders, diplomats, and independent journalists eager to share the story of the mighty Voidfang fleet tearing itself apart from within. Back on the Kryzai homeworld, the political fallout was immediate and severe. Citizens who had once celebrated Grand Marshal Vikarn Doth as a hero now demanded answers. Families of soldiers lost in the failed battles held public protests, asking why their loved ones had died aboard ships that exploded without any enemy weapon striking them. Military leaders who had quietly disagreed with Vikarn's aggressive expansion policies began speaking out more openly, no longer willing to stay silent while their fleet crumbled under the weight of his pride. Vikarn tried desperately to control the situation, first blaming enemy sabotage, then blaming faulty manufacturing processes within his own engineering divisions. But too many soldiers, engineers, and officers had witnessed the truth firsthand. Whispers of the real cause, a fundamental flaw in the stolen and poorly understood human technology, spread faster than Vikarn's officials could contain them. Within weeks, the Kryzai ruling council, fearing further instability and growing public anger, removed Vikarn from his position as Grand Marshal. He was replaced by a more cautious and diplomatic leader, a respected elder named Sael Thurin, who immediately reached out to the Compact Council, seeking to repair relations damaged by years of Vikarn's aggressive ambitions. One of Sael Thurin's first official acts was to formally acknowledge, for the first time, that the Voidfang technology had indeed been developed using stolen human research. It was a painful admission, but one he believed necessary, to begin rebuilding trust, both with Earth and with the wider Compact community. He personally reached out to Earth's diplomatic representatives, including Director Priya Anand, offering a formal apology and requesting a new, honest partnership between their two species. Earth's leadership, guided by Admiral Cole and Dr. Marsh, approached this offer carefully. They understood that true trust could not be rebuilt overnight, especially after everything that had happened, but they also recognized an opportunity, not just to punish past wrongs, but to help guide the galaxy toward a safer, more cooperative future. Dr. Marsh, despite everything the Kryzai had done, agreed to a proposal that surprised many of his colleagues. Rather than simply celebrating the Kryzai's technological downfall, he offered to help Sael Thurin's new government properly understand and, if necessary, safely decommission the remaining unstable Voidfang cores still active across their fleet, preventing further tragic accidents. "This isn't about revenge," he explained during a council meeting back on Earth. "The mistake they made wasn't stealing knowledge because they were evil. It was stealing knowledge without respecting how much they still had to learn. If we help them understand that now, honestly and carefully, maybe it stops another species from making the exact same mistake in the future." Admiral Cole supported this decision, though she remained cautious. "We help them fix this properly," she said, "but we do it through official channels, with full transparency to the Compact Council. No more secrets, no more hidden agreements. This has to be done in a way that actually builds real trust." Over the following months, a joint Earth Kryzai engineering team, led by Dr. Marsh and Threl Kovos, who had been promoted to lead engineer under the new Kryzai leadership, worked carefully to study and safely deactivate the most unstable Voidfang cores across the fleet. It was slow, careful work, requiring patience and mutual respect between engineers who, only months earlier, had been on opposing sides of a dangerous conflict. During this collaboration, something unexpected happened. Threl, who had always suspected the true solution to the Voidfang problem involved restoring some form of organic connection to the cores, finally received full support to explore this idea properly. Working alongside Dr. Marsh, he began developing a new approach, one that respected the original human design philosophy, while incorporating certain strengths of Cry-Xi engineering. This new project, eventually named the Harmony Core Initiative, aimed to create power systems that combined organic adaptive connections with carefully balanced computer support systems, rather than trying to replace one with the other. It represented a true blending of ideas between two very different species, built on honesty and mutual respect instead of theft and misunderstanding. Meanwhile, across the wider compact, the entire event served as a powerful lesson. Smaller species, who had once feared standing up to Cry-Xi aggression, gained new confidence after witnessing the hierarchy's fleet fail, not through enemy strength, but through their own arrogance and misunderstanding of stolen technology. The Compact Council, inspired by these events, began pushing for stronger protections around shared technological research, encouraging honest collaboration between species, rather than secretive theft or forced imitation. Earth's reputation within the Compact grew significantly stronger during this period. Many species, who had previously seen humanity as simply a new and unusual addition to galactic society, now viewed Earth as a wise and steady voice, one capable of both powerful innovation and thoughtful diplomacy. Director Anand's calm leadership throughout the crisis, combined with Dr. Marsh's willingness to help even those who had wronged Earth, earned humanity genuine respect across many worlds. Admiral Cole continued overseeing the expansion of the Deep Sync Core program, ensuring Earth's own fleet remained strong and properly understood from the ground up, rather than relying on flashy but poorly grounded power. Under her careful leadership, Earth's Sentinel Group grew from a small experimental division into a respected and reliable part of Earth's overall defense strategy, admired by allied species for its stability and precision, rather than simple brute strength. Back on the former Cry-Xi flagship, now renamed to remove Vikarn's legacy entirely, Threl Kovos worked late one evening, reviewing early results from the Harmony Core Initiative. The new hybrid cores, still in early testing, showed remarkable promise, stable, powerful, and properly connected to trained operators through a careful, respectful process, built on real understanding, rather than rushed imitation. He thought back to the early days of the Stolen Technology Project, remembering how confident everyone had been that simply copying the machine would be enough. He understood now, in a way he wished he had understood much sooner, that true innovation required more than just observing something powerful. It required patience, humility, and a genuine desire to understand the deeper reasons behind why something worked the way it did. Dr. Marsh, visiting the newly renamed Cry-Xi flagship to review the joint project's progress, found Threl working late in the engineering bay. The two men, who had once stood on opposite sides of a dangerous conflict, now worked together as respected colleagues, bonded by a shared understanding of what true innovation really required. "You know," Threl said quietly, looking over the latest test results, "I used to think understanding didn't matter, as long as the results looked impressive. I thought power was simply about numbers, about output, about raw strength." Dr. Marsh smiled slightly, remembering his own early lessons about the deep, quiet respect required to truly master any technology. "Power without understanding is just borrowed time," he said. "Eventually, everything you don't understand catches up with you. The real strength isn't in the machine itself, it's in truly knowing why it works." Threl nodded slowly, looking out at the stars beyond the observation window. "I think Vikarn understood that too late," he said quietly. "I hope the rest of the galaxy learns it a little sooner than we did." Months later, during an official Compact Council meeting, Sael Thurin stood before representatives from every member species, formally announcing the successful completion of the joint Earth Cry-Xi Harmony Core project. He spoke openly about the mistakes of the past, acknowledging the pain and loss caused by his predecessor's reckless ambition, and expressed deep gratitude toward Earth for choosing understanding and cooperation over anger and revenge. Director Anand, standing among the assembled representatives, felt a quiet sense of pride as she watched the moment unfold. Earth, a species that had only recently joined the wider galactic community, had helped guide one of its most powerful members through a painful but important lesson, proving that true strength came not from taking what others had built, but from understanding why it worked in the first place. As the meeting concluded, representatives from many smaller species approached Earth's delegation, eager to discuss new possibilities for honest, respectful technological cooperation in the future. Word of Earth's calm handling of the crisis, and its willingness to help even a former rival species, spread quickly, cementing humanity's growing reputation as a thoughtful and trustworthy presence within the compact. Back on Earth, Dr. Marsh returned to his quiet lab, where he continued refining new ideas alongside his growing team of engineers. Priya Malik, now leading her own research division within the Deep Sync Core program, often reminded newer team members of the lesson their mentor had taught them from the very beginning of the crisis. Never mistake copying something for understanding it, she would tell them during training sessions. The galaxy is full of powerful ideas, but real strength comes from taking the time to truly understand why those ideas work, not just from grabbing whatever looks impressive on the surface. As the years passed, the Harmony Core initiative expanded beyond just Earth and Cry's-Eye cooperation, eventually influencing technological development across many species within the compact. The painful lessons learned from Vikarn's reckless ambition became a guiding example, taught in engineering academies across dozens of worlds, a reminder that true progress required patience, honesty, and genuine understanding, rather than shortcuts built on theft or blind imitation. Admiral Cole, reflecting on everything that had happened during a quiet moment aboard the Prometheus, once shared her own thoughts with a group of young officers preparing for their first deep space assignments. "We didn't win because we had bigger guns or faster ships," she told them. "We won because we understood our own strength deeply enough to be patient, and because our enemy didn't understand theirs well enough to be careful. That difference, more than anything else, decided everything." Far across the galaxy, Dr. Aidan Marsh continued his quiet work, always remembering the simple truth he had known from the very beginning, a truth that had ultimately shaped the fate of two great species and set a new example for the wider galaxy. Technology without understanding was never truly power at all. It was only ever a problem, patiently waiting to reveal itself. And in the end, it was humanity's deep respect for that simple truth, more than any weapon or warship, that had truly changed the course of galactic history.